The Drive.
Slingshot engage.
Revving up your morning. Now on the Fan Sports Network.
Yeah, thanks for waking up with us here on the Fan Sports Network. And as promised, very special guest, one of the favorite guests we get before the college football season almost every year for over 10 years. We've had Phil Steele joining us. Check him out on Twitter at PhilSteele042, and of course PhilSteele.com. You can download a digital copy of his college football preview magazine. You can pick him up around bookstores nationwide, and he joins us now on the hotline. Phil, it's a pleasure, my friend. Let's talk some football. How are you, buddy?
You know, I am doing great, Devin, and appreciate you having me on once again. It's been a decade-long thing with us, hasn't it been?
Yeah, it has, and obviously we're excited, man. What's new with the magazine this year? Let's start with that. What are you excited about? Is there any new wrinkles that you've thrown at people that they can read about that's not been in the magazine maybe prior years?
Well, probably one thing that changed this year, Devin, was we had to go to the press a little bit later than usual, and that's because we had to capture all these transfer portal changes. The portal closed May 15th. I gave it 3 full weeks. We were able to capture almost all the transfer portal moves that happened after that. So the magazine's fully up to date with the transfer portal. I'd say 95% of the moves captured. Any magazine that came out early missed a lot of transfer portal moves. So that's one advantage we have. And then the digital magazine, Devin, we actually update all the way through the start of the season. As an example, if you go into the digital magazine and look at the head coach in Northwestern, right now it's David Braun, not Pat Fitzgerald. And we circle players that are out for the year or have transferred. So the digital magazine updated all the way through the month of September.
I love it. Of course, FBS Magazine, FCS Magazine, you got the NFL magazine as well. So a ton of content, and Phil with us here live on the show. Phil, let's start with our in-state colleges and give some of our Utah Ute fans a little bit of a feel of what they can read about in the magazine this year. I know there's a lot of optimism about the Utah Utes, back-to-back Pac-12 championship appearances for Coach Whittingham and the fellas.
Yeah, and there should be optimism. You know, if you're building a team, you want to be strong at the line of scrimmage. And going over the team with Coach Whittingham, this team's very strong at the line of scrimmage. In fact, he made an argument to me that he felt the offensive line and defensive line combined might be the best in the country. And I agree. I think they have outstanding line play. And then you look at a quarterback like Cam Rising coming back. You look in the backfield, Jaquindon Jackson is a guy that moved from quarterback to running back, really caught his stride late in the year. I'm expecting a huge year out of him. You know, when Brant Keithy went down last year, it was a big-time negative. However, Keithy's back this year, teamed with Vele at receiver. You know the defense is going to be solid, led by that D-line. Do have some question marks a little bit at the linebacker spot, but they're going to be solid. And this is a very good Utah team. I rate them number 10 in my power poll heading into the year. They're a legitimate contender in the Pac-12. The one thing I don't like about Utah this year, though, Devin, is the schedule of the power or of the big 6 teams in the Pac-12, as I call them, the top 6 teams, which, by the way, the top 6 teams in the Pac-12 went 30-2 against the bottom 6 teams in the Pac-12 last year. And of the teams in the top 6, Utah's the one that has to play 3 road games against the big boys, playing USC, Washington, and Oregon State all on the road this year, with that Oregon State game a short week on Friday after playing UCLA. So they have the toughest schedule of any of the top teams in the Pac-12.
And Phil, you talk about the defense and for Utah, and 2 years ago they lost the Pac-12 defensive player Devin Lloyd to the draft. This past year they lost unanimous first-team All-American Clark Phillips. Who leads this year from a production leadership standpoint? Is it the Stanford transfer Lavani Damouni? Is he a guy that could get in the mix as a leader and a production guy for Utah's defense?
Yeah, I think he and Kareem Reed are 2 guys that come in there. Reed is probably the headliner of the linebacking corps right now. He's the captain of the team, and it is a very good unit linebacking corps, especially if Damouni steps in there and does well. Now, Tafuni up front is probably the best interior defensive lineman in the Pac-12 this year. I'm looking for big things out of him. He is 6'3", 312 pounds. And then the secondary is solid, led by Cole Bishop. Cole Bishop is an outstanding strong safety and one of the most talented safeties in the country. So they've got key players across the board.
And I want to ask you, Phil, you know, we look at this team for the University of Utah, and there's a lot of question marks around Cam Rising as he get into the beginning of the season. Is he going to be healthy? He's saying that he is, but realistically, what are our thoughts at the quarterback position for the Utes at the beginning of the year?
Well, I think Cam will be ready for the start of the year. I'm banking on that because they got two big games right out of the box with Florida on a Thursday, followed up by Baylor on the road. Those are two extremely tough tests. Now, if he's not, Brandon Rose is a 6'2", 207 redshirt frosh. He got a lot of the number one reps in the spring. He's athletic. He's a drop-back passer, and he's got great arm talent. So he very well could be the backup. Or Bryson Barnes. We saw him last year. Started the Washington State game, led a victory, so he's got the experience factor now going for him. So I think they're better prepared at the backup quarterback spot should something happen to Rising than necessarily they were last year. But I do think Cam will be ready for the opener.
Phil Steele hanging out with us here. You mentioned their schedule. I'm looking at one game in particular, and that's October 21st against USC, Phil. That is the key one. I think this is a schedule where if they could – I mean, they let that one slip at the Swamp last year. But if they get Florida and they get Baylor and they beat USC, they're undefeated. I really, truly believe that. What are your thoughts? You've got them ranked as the 42nd toughest schedule, which is where you rank them this year.
Yeah, and yes, I do have them favored. The Oregon State game, in my mind, is a toss-up. Reser Stadium is very tough to play in. Oregon State's 12-1 at home the last 2 years, playing in a stadium that was under construction. Now that the stadium is complete, and this is by far the best team that Jonathan Smith has put on the field. So I think the Oregon State game may be tricky, but you're right. If they beat USC and beat Oregon State on the road, this team is 7-0 at that point. The rest of the schedule's not easy with Oregon at home and at Washington, but I think Utah's got the talent. And once again, if you're strong at the line of scrimmage, they're set up well to play well in those big games.
And Phil, you said in a radio interview with McElroy and Kabelek, you said the league, the Pac-12 I'm referring to, would, quote, cannibalize itself. Can you expand a little bit on that thought? Is this not the year that we see a Pac-12 team in the playoff, or is this league just too good? Are they going to beat each other up?
I think that's probably going to be the key this year. Is the league is too damn good. You look at the quarterbacks. USC's got the Heisman Trophy winner in Caleb Williams. Utah's got Cam Rising. Oregon has got Bo Nix. Washington has got Michael Penix. I think Oregon State gets an upgrade at quarterback with DJ Uiagalelei, and they are very deep and talented, Jonathan Smith's best team. And then UCLA, if new quarterback Dante Moore catches on, we've seen them on an upward trajectory each and every year under Chip Kelly. And there's a stretch there, like a 5-week stretch when they're all playing each other. I think it's going to be tough for any team to get through the entire conference unbeaten this year, and that may just keep the Pac-12 out of the playoff spot. But I would think there's also, if you look at it the other way, there are 4 or 5 legitimate contenders for a playoff spot in the Pac-12 should they win some of the big road games.
Phil Steele with this, Utah Utes. Obviously, we saw the news yesterday, Colorado leaving in the future to go to the Big 12. Phil, what's your mindset when you see this shakeup continuously in college football? What goes through your mind? I kind of feel sad in some ways. I'm excited in other ways. As we continuously see teams jumping conferences, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a traditionalist, so I prefer to have USC and UCLA in the Pac-12. I'd prefer to have Oklahoma and Texas playing in the Big 12. But the one thing I look at is, I'll go back to 1995, the first year of the magazine, and that was the last year of the Southwest Conference. And back then, that was a pretty seismic shift, losing a conference that had been among the best in football. They lost a team like Texas moving to the Big 12 and Arkansas and Texas A&M moving to the Southeastern Conference, and it was a massive shakeup at that point. Now I think, after surviving that, I think college football will survive whatever's thrown at them in the next couple of years. I just wish the damn Pac-12 would get a TV agreement already.
Us too. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about that for way too long. Let's switch to one of the newest members of the Big 12, and that is the BYU Cougars. We know it's coming, but it was made official back on July 1st. Cougars do have some momentum going into this conference, but let's start with your thoughts on the Cougars. Give us an overall preview of what Cougar fans can see in the college football magazine.
It was interesting talking to Kalani Sitake about the move, and he had mentioned that he and numerous assistants that he has on the team were with Utah when they made the transition into the Pac-12, which is always a big step up in level of competition. Last year BYU did play some Power 5 teams, but now they're playing mostly Power 5 teams, so it's a tougher schedule this year. But he actually felt, that they were probably in a better situation than Utah was when they moved to the Pac-12, and he felt pretty good about the team. I think a lot of it's going to depend how Keaton Slovis does at quarterback. Keaton did not have a great year last year at Pitt, but he fits the system well and made a great transition to the offense. He's become a team leader, and I think that's going to help them out a lot. You look at the running back core, they had an Aiden Robbins, a 1,000-yard rusher from UNLV. The receiving core looks solid with Isaac Rex at tight end, Hill and Epps back at wide receiver. The offensive line looks to be in fairly good shape. They brought in a bunch of transfers, one from Utah, one from Utah State, one from Oklahoma State. And defensively, they've got a couple of stars like Max Tooley, Ben Bywater, Eddie Heckard, all top-notch players. Now, the schedule gets tougher, and even the non-conference schedule is, they have to play Arkansas on the road there. I think it's going to be a transition year. I don't see them matching last year's 8-win total. I don't think they'll be a contender in the Big 12 in their first year there, but I do think they're not going to finish at the bottom of the Big 12 either. They go from number 5 on my experience chart down to number 75, so they're not as experienced as last year. They lose 35 lettermen, but I think they still have a great shot at getting to a bowl game this year, but I don't see them matching last year's 8-win total.
Would 6 wins be appeasing to Cougar fans in their first year in the Big 12, Phil, do you think?
It should be. Now, naturally, fan bases. There's fan bases that want 12-0 every year. But I think a bowl game would be a great first step for the Big 12, or in the move to the Big 12.
And Phil, you talked about Keaton Slovis and kind of a down year for him, well-traveled, USC, Pitt, now BYU. Does he bring a calming influence with Andy Roderick's offense? And is he grasping it fully? Is he going to be ready to go week 1? And also wanted to comment on the road environments that BYU is going to encounter this year. They've got Fayetteville on the docket. They've got Morgantown, Austin, Texas. They're going to be playing some big-time environments next year. And how do you think they react to that?
Yeah, and it's always tough playing on the road, but as you mentioned, when you go on the road, for the first time to new environments like that, then it always makes it even a little bit tougher. Even Kansas last year, their home stadium started getting a little bit louder as the success came, so that's not going to be an easy road trip there. I think Sitake will have them prepared for it. I think they'll be an underdog in all of their road games this year, but they definitely can steal 1 or 2 of them, and they've proven in the past they can play on the road. I mean, they went into Boise last year and won, went into Stanford, USF. Previous year they played at Pullman and won that game. They won at USC 2 years ago. So this is a team that can play in some solid road environments and do well.
And I want to ask you, Phil, because I look over at BYU, and last season they got hit kind of with a little injury bug there in the wide receiver room. It seemed like they really had a lack of playmakers. Do you think that there's somebody that now, I know Cody Epps has kind of stepped up. I think Gunnar Romney he's out of the picture. But you look at some of these players, who can step up for BYU and kind of be that playmaker they can go to this year?
Yeah, I think when you take a look at a guy like Epps, he only had 4 starts last year, only played in 8 games due to the injuries, being out for the year. I think if he's back 100% healthy, he's got the ball skills. His ball skills are excellent. He's great. He's got a great feel for the ball. I think he can be up there, and he should be 100% this year. And then Hill is another guy that can make big plays. He's a solid blocker, and he's got really good size. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. Those 2 guys, I think, will be the headliners.
Special teams is always something you break down in the magazine. A lot of people won't talk about special teams, but our good buddy that came through St. George, Utah, went to Dixie High, Hobbs Nyberg. He's been kind of an electric punt returner. Where's he at on the depth chart going into the season at receiver? And do you think that the special teams, they lose their kicker? How will that do in the Big 12?
Yeah, and With Nyberg, right now I've got him in the mix at wide receiver, but not a starter. But he is electric. And if I was Coach Satake, I'd try to get the ball in his hands. Losing the kicker is never easy, but they've got one of the best punters in the country in Ryan Reckow. He's an NFL-type punter. He can flip the field. He makes big kicks. He's got a huge leg. Really like having him. And to me, special teams sort of revolves around the punter because they're the ones that, as mentioned, can flip the field. Now, kicker, they bring in a guy from Boise State, and Will Farron comes in. He did some kickoffs there. He hit 17 of 36, 17 touchbacks on 36 kickoffs. He's got a strong leg, but it's going to be tough to match the accuracy that they had last year with Oldroyd. So I think the special teams actually only finished number 107 in my rankings last year. I think they'll be improved this year.
That's the kind of insight Phil Steele gives us. We ask him about the kickers, and he comes through in the clutch. Let's go to Utah State. Give us some overall preview of the Aggies this year, Phil. What do you see up there in Logan, Utah?
Well, Coach Anderson got hit after spring practice with a couple of tough transfers to the portal late, so those were unexpected, but you look at them quarterback-wise, last year they began the year with Logan Bonner. He got injured. Then Cooper Legas stepped in and did well. And then he even got injured. At one point they're playing Bishop Davenport at QB, your third or fourth string quarterback. So they were down deep into the quarterback pool last year. But I think Legas comes back. He's a guy that's super athletic, very mobile. He's got good study habits, and he's a great leader. I think he's going to have a solid year at QB. Running back, they lose a 1,000-yard rusher in Calvin Tyler, but Coach Anderson feels pretty good about the depth they have at running back, feels that the Briggs, Booth, and Faison combination will do well. You look at the receivers. They've got good depth there, led by Terrell Vaughn, who comes back. They do lose Brian Cobbs, a big loss. Offensive line, just one starter back. I'm a little concerned how quickly this unit comes together. Defensively, they lost a couple of key guys at the defensive end spot, in Vaughns and Greziak. The defensive end is probably my biggest question mark coming into the defense this year. This is a team that got hit hard. They only have 9 starters back. They're only number 114 on my experience chart, which is a big drop down. And they play each of the top 5 teams in the Mountain West. They're the only team in the Mountain West that has to play each of the top 5 teams. So the schedule's not easy. They're probably going to be an underdog this year in 7 or 8 games. But Blake Anderson's still the head coach. I got an idea he can still get them competing for a bowl game this year. It does look like a rebuilding year for Utah State, but once again, I think Anderson will have them fighting for a bowl game.
All right, make sure you pick up if you want to read more on all the position groups, Phil's forecast, all in the magazine. Pick them up, Barnes & Nobles. You can go to philsteele.com, get the digital version of the magazine as well. If you're an Aggie fan, Ute fan, Cougar fan, you got to see what Phil Steele is forecasting for your team this year. There's also the FCS magazine, right, Phil? I think it's $25. You can get the digital copy on the website, and that includes Utah Tech and Southern Utah University, which a lot of our local listening audience obviously has a lot of intrigue, is they're both now in this little merged new United Athletic Conference that Andrew Luck's father, Oliver Luck, is the commissioner of.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about the FCS version, guys, because nobody else really has an FCS magazine. I've tried FCS magazines before and put them in bookstores and things like that, and it never sold. But the digital version we've got available now, and in years past I might have given 1 page for each FCS team. This year we have 2 full pages on every FCS team. It's laid out exactly like the FBS magazine is. First time we've ever done that. 2 full pages on every FCS team. All the information you could possibly want. You've got my metrics in there, turnovers equals turnaround for the FCS, close wins, close losses, and it's available right now. You could go to philsteele.com, hit the digital thing at the store, the digital versions, and pick up the FCS magazine and read about Southern Utah. And even Utah State's playing Idaho State this year. You want to learn about Idaho State? 2 full pages on them as well.
Yeah, I love it. Did you call every FCS coach just like you do with all the FBS schools? I'm assuming you do, right, Phil?
There's just not enough time in the day for that. But I am working my way into the FCS coaches. You'll see on my Twitter, at PhilSteele042, whenever I talk to an FCS coach, I'll be talking to some of them during the month of August. I'll try to start nailing some of those. But, yeah, there's only so much time in the day. And talking to the FBS coaches, as it was, I talked to 123 of the 133 head coaches. We weren't able to match up the schedules for the other 10.
Wow, that is incredible. I don't think anybody else can stake claim to a number even close to that. Phil's still hanging out with us here. Paulie, I know you're interested in Phil's Heisman watch list.
Yeah, Phil, I just wanted to get your take on who you think is the leading contender. Is Caleb Williams going to do the Archie Griffin and win 2? Or is Quinn Ewers 10-1, Jaden Daniels 10-1? I kind of like Michael Penix Jr. 16-1. Just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, Penix would be a good pick, especially when you look at Washington's schedule. They could very well open up the season 7-0, and he's going to throw for a ton of yards in that offense. You know, if I was taking Caleb Williams or the field, I would take the field because only one player has ever repeated, and Caleb Williams is not only contending against everybody else in college football, he's competing against himself from last year. And last year he threw for 4,500 yards at 67% with a 42-5 ratio. If he comes up anything less than that, people will say he's having a down year. So it's going to be tough for him to repeat. 2 dark horses to throw at you, but I think they're both 18-1. I'm looking at Sam Hartman for Notre Dame. Last year Notre Dame had a backup quarterback. This year they've got Hartman. They've got a great supporting cast. They get USC at home, so if he beats Caleb Williams head-to-head, look out. And they also get Ohio State at home. That would be a big victory. I think he has a shot at it. And then Carson Beck of Georgia. You know, he's not even a returning starter, hasn't even started. But he's been in the system for Georgia for 4 years. If you're the number 1 quarterback on the number 1 team, you're in good shape. He's got my number 1 offensive line in front of him, number 4 receivers, number 6 running backs, and should put up big stats as he'll be a double-digit favorite in the first 10 games. Keep your eyes on Carson Beck at 18-1 as well.
Another guy 18-1, Phil, that I wanted to get your take on would be Marvin Harrison Jr. The quarterback uncertainty, C.J. Stroud leaves. You know, that's a little bit in limbo. I know that there's going to be a 5-star. There's going to be a stud there. But did Devontae Smith steal the receiver Heisman for the next 5 years, or does Marvin Harrison have a chance?
He definitely has a chance, especially if he has 3 big games. Talking about at Notre Dame, at Wisconsin, at Michigan. If he has big games in those 3, look out, because that's one of the ones everybody will be watching. They're road tests against top teams and could really make the season for him. So I would put him in there as a definite contender this year.
Some of the other things in the magazine, Phil will break down who has the toughest schedule. Also, predictions, Phil. Can you give us a little insight on who you're predicting as far as the national championship and the college football playoffs is concerned?
Yeah, for the playoffs this year, I went with Georgia naturally. It'd be a double-digit favorite on almost every game. At Tennessee, they're probably only a 7 or 8 point favorite. And as mentioned, they have the talent. Alabama, never discount Nick Saban. And when he's been preseason number 1, like the last 2 years, he's only won 1 national title. But make him not preseason number 1, that's when he's most dangerous. You go back to 2020, he came in number 3. They finished 13-0. There's plenty of talent there. I've got Alabama making the playoff. I've got Michigan coming out of the Big Ten. They do get Ohio State at home, which is huge. They've got the best schedule of the Big 3. And I think this is Jim Harbaugh's best team that he's put on the field in his 9 years. And then finally, I went with Clemson. I think when the ACC media poll comes out, they're going to have Florida State the favorite to win the ACC. But when I talked to Coach Sweeney, he had told me that the defensive line, remember that 2018 unit, was one of the best ever in college football. He said this group doesn't have the star power of 2018, but is deeper in talent and experience. I made him my number 1 D-line in the country. They've got Carter and Trotter back at linebacker. And Cade Klubnik, I think, will adapt well to Garrett Riley's offense. Riley, of course, was the offense coordinator at TCU last year. Veteran offensive line, receiving core. They've got Shipley and Moffa at running back. I've got Clemson favored in all 12 games, as their toughest 2 opponents are Florida State and Notre Dame, and they get them both at home.
The one, the only, Phil Steele, at Phil Steele 042, philsteele.com. Go get the FCS Digital magazine. You can also download the FBS magazine. You want to find out more about your favorite college football conference or teams. It's all in the magazine, getting you geared up for another exciting college football year. And Phil, always a pleasure, man. We look forward to the day you come on and talk a little Utah, BYU, Utah State with us and break down the Heisman. And thanks so much for the time. I know you got lots of radio drops to do today, so we really appreciate it.
Hey, a lot of fun talking football with you guys in the state of Utah today. Always enjoyed the time.
All right. Phil Steele, everybody, live here on the Fan Sports Network on The Drive. We got to take a break. When we come back, lots more coming up. Coach Shane Johansson, some of the Sentinel baseball players, going to drop by the show right after this.